The text came in at 11:47 p.m. while I was sitting in my recliner, nursing a beer and watching some mindless late-night comedy show. The blue glow of my phone lit up the dark living room like a tiny lighthouse of betrayal. I'm at Mom's for a few days. Need some space to think. Don't wait up. Tara. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at the message, then glanced across the room at the framed wedding photo on the mantel. 5 years ago, Tara McKay had been the most beautiful woman in our small New England town of Millbrook. Hell, she still was. Pilates instructor, wannabe fitness influencer, the kind of woman who made other wives nervous at neighborhood barbecues. The funny thing about that text? I was literally sitting 3 feet away from Tara's mother. "Everything all right, Evan?" Margaret Hoffman asked from the couch, where she'd been helping me sort through old tax documents. My mother-in-law had been here since dinner, going through paperwork for her late husband's estate. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I held up my phone. "Tara says she's staying with you for a few days." Margaret's wrinkled face scrunched up in confusion. "What? I haven't seen Tara since last Sunday at church." She said something about being too busy with her new clients at the studio. The beer suddenly tasted like cardboard in my mouth. 5 years of marriage, and my wife had just sent me the laziest lie in the history of infidelity. She couldn't even be bothered to coordinate with her own mother. "Maybe she meant she was going to stop by later tonight?" Margaret offered, but her voice carried doubt. I opened the Find My iPhone app that Tara and I had shared since our honeymoon. "For emergencies," she'd said back then, when we were still pretending to trust each other completely. The little blue dot that represented my wife's location pulsed steadily on my screen. Downtown Millbrook, specifically the Riverside Inn. The Riverside Inn wasn't exactly the Four Seasons, but it was the nicest hotel in our little town. Clean rooms, decent restaurant, the kind of place where traveling salesmen stayed and where locals went for anniversary dinners they wanted to remember, or where married women went to screw around behind their husbands' backs. "Margaret," I said, standing up and grabbing my keys from the coffee table, "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Let me drive you home." 20 minutes later, after dropping off my confused mother-in-law, I was sitting in my pickup truck in the Riverside Inn parking lot. The place was mostly empty. It was a Tuesday night in October, not exactly peak tourist season, but there, parked under the amber glow of a streetlight, was Tara's white Honda Civic, right next to a silver BMW that I recognized immediately. Cole Travers, Millbrook's golden boy realtor, the guy who sold million-dollar lake houses to city folks looking for weekend retreats. Married to a sweet kindergarten teacher named Beth, father of 2 little girls who played soccer with half the kids in town. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, trying to decide what kind of husband I wanted to be. The kind who storms upstairs and makes a scene, the kind who pretends not to know and slowly dies inside, or the kind who gets creative. My phone buzzed with another text from Tara. "Mom's making her famous pot roast tomorrow. Might stay an extra day. Love you." That decided it for me. I drove to the 24-hour Kinko's on Route 9 and printed out divorce papers I'd found online. Nothing fancy, just a basic petition for dissolution of marriage citing irreconcilable differences. I filled in the blanks with a black Sharpie, signed my name with a flourish, and stuffed the whole thing into a manila envelope. Back at the hotel, I slipped the night desk clerk a 20 and told him I needed to deliver some important documents to my wife in room 237. The kid, couldn't have been more than 19, looked bored enough to help a man commit murder for the right price. "She's expecting these," I lied smoothly. "Anniversary surprise." He handed over a key card without even checking my ID. I could have walked right in, could have caught them in whatever position they'd chosen for their betrayal, could have screamed and thrown punches and given the whole town something to gossip about for the next decade. Instead, I slid the envelope under their door, along with a handwritten note. "Hope you're having fun at your mom's house. Don't bother coming home. Your loving husband." Then I went back to my truck, pulled out my phone, and started making some calls. By 6 a.m., I'd already been to the bank, our joint credit card companies, and had a very productive conversation with my lawyer, Jim Patterson. Jim and I went to high school together, and he owed me a favor from when I'd renovated his kitchen at cost 2 years ago. "You sure about this, Evan?" Jim had asked over coffee at the all-night diner on Main Street. Moving this fast might look vindictive in court. "Jim," I'd replied, stirring sugar into my 3rd cup of coffee, "my wife is currently in bed with Cole Travers, telling me she's at her mother's house. I think the vindictive ship has already sailed." By the time Tara's first panicked call came in at 7:23 a.m., I was already at my construction supply company, McKay Building Materials, going through inventory with my right-hand man, Jesse Rodriguez. "Boss," Jesse said, looking up from his clipboard, "your phone's been buzzing like a chainsaw for the past 10 minutes. I glanced at the screen. 17 missed calls from Tara, 12 from an unknown number that I assumed was Cole's, and 3 voicemails that I had no intention of listening to. "Domestic situation," I told Jesse, who'd worked for me for 3 years and had seen enough of my marriage to fill in the blanks. "Tara's been having herself a little vacation." Jesse, a stocky guy in his 40s with calloused hands and a dry sense of humor, just nodded. "The kind of vacation that involves that BMW I saw her with last week at Rosetti's?" "You saw them together? Tuesday lunch. Looked pretty cozy for a business meeting." Jesse set down his clipboard and crossed his arms. "I figured you knew." My phone rang again. This time I answered. "Evan, what the hell did you do?" Tara's voice was shrill, panicked. In the background I could hear Cole's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said pleasantly. "How's your mom's pot roast?" Silence. Then, "We need to talk." "I think we're talking right now. Although I have to say, the cell service at your mom's house has really improved. Last time you stayed there, I could barely reach you. Evan, please. This isn't what it looks like." I laughed, and it felt good. "Tara, honey, I know exactly what this looks like. It looks like my wife lied to me so she could spend the night screwing around with a married man at the Riverside Inn. It looks like I've been an idiot for longer than I care to admit." Jesse had stopped pretending to work and was now openly listening to my side of the conversation. He gave me a thumbs up. "The credit cards, Evan. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. They were in my name. The checking account was joint, but I moved my half to a new account this morning. Your half is still there, all $837 of it." More silence, then Cole's voice, louder now. "Let me talk to him." "Oh, good," I said. "Put Cole on. I've been wanting to have a chat with him." A moment later, Cole's smooth realtor voice came through the speaker. "Evan, look, I think we can all handle this like adults." "Adults," I repeated. "That's interesting, Cole. Do adults usually sneak around behind their spouses' backs? Because I'm pretty sure your wife Beth thinks you were at that real estate conference in Hartford. Now listen here. No, you listen." My voice went cold. "You want to play house with my wife? Congratulations. You can have her. But you're going to do it without my money, my house, or my respect. And Cole, next time you want to have an affair, maybe don't park your car right next to your girlfriend's. Small town, remember?" I hung up and looked at Jesse, who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Boss," he said, "I think I'm going to enjoy working for you a whole lot more now." My phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off and slipped it into my pocket. "Jesse, I'm going to need you to handle things here for a couple hours. I have some errands to run." "Anything I can help with?" I thought about it. Jesse was divorced himself, had gone through his own hell with an unfaithful wife 5 years ago. He'd understand. "Actually, yeah. You still have that GPS tracker from when you were keeping tabs on your ex?" Jesse's grin got wider. "In my toolbox. Battery's probably dead, but I can get a new one." "Perfect. Meet me at Rosetti's for lunch. I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting day." Rosetti's Italian restaurant was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the lunch crowd was basically a live-action version of the town gossip network. I'd chosen a corner booth where I could see the entire dining room, and I'd been there for exactly 12 minutes when Mrs. Eleanor Greeley slid into the seat across from me. Mrs. Greeley was 73 years old, lived 2 houses down from me and Tara, and had the supernatural ability to know everything that happened in Millbrook before it actually happened. She also made the best chocolate chip cookies in 3 counties, and had never met a piece of gossip she couldn't improve with creative embellishment. "Evan McKay," she said, settling her considerable bulk into the booth. "You look like a man who's had an interesting morning." "Mrs. Greeley," I replied, not bothering to hide my amusement. "Let me guess. You heard about my wife's sudden vacation to her mother's house?" "Oh, honey." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "I saw that BMW in your driveway last Thursday afternoon and stayed for 3 hours. Tara told me it was a client meeting about selling the house." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Selling the house?" That's what she said. Cole Travers was doing a market analysis, helping her understand the current value. I thought it was odd, since you two just refinanced last year. I set down my cup carefully. "What else did she tell you?" Mrs. Greeley's eyes lit up. She lived for moments like this. "Well, she mentioned that you two had been having some problems. Money troubles, she said. That you'd been drinking more, staying out late, not paying attention to her needs. My needs, I repeated flatly. Her needs, dear. She said you'd become distant, unromantic, that she was feeling neglected. Jesse chose that moment to walk in, spotted us, and headed over with a small black device in his hand. He slid into the booth next to me and nodded politely to Mrs. Greeley. Ma'am, he said. Evan, got that thing you wanted. Fresh battery, good for about 2 weeks. Mrs. Greeley's eyes went wide as she took in the GPS tracker. Oh my, she whispered. This is better than my soap opera. Mrs. Greeley, I said slowly, I need you to understand something. My wife wasn't at her mother's house last night. She was at the Riverside Inn with Cole Travers. She lied to me, she's been lying to you, and apparently she's been planning to divorce me and sell our house without bothering to mention it. The older woman's face went through several expressions: surprise, indignation, and finally, a kind of righteous anger that made her look like an avenging angel in a floral print dress. That little hussy, she hissed. I defended her to Martha Kowalski just last week when Martha said she thought Tara was putting on airs. I said, no, Tara's just ambitious. There's nothing wrong with a woman wanting to better herself. What did Martha say? Jesse asked, clearly enjoying the show. Martha said she'd seen Tara and Cole having lunch at that new place in Riverside, the one with the fancy wine list. Said they were holding hands across the table like teenagers. I pulled out my phone and turned it back on. 43 missed calls, 27 text messages, and 6 voicemails. I deleted them all without reading or listening. Mrs. Greeley, I said, I'm going to ask you a favor, and I want you to know that I'll understand if you say no. She leaned forward eagerly. Anything, dear? I want you to call everyone you know and tell them exactly what you just told me, about the BMW in my driveway, about Tara's plans to sell the house, about Cole and Tara at that restaurant in Riverside. Can you do that? Mrs. Greeley's smile was absolutely predatory. Evan McKay, it would be my pleasure. She hauled herself out of the booth and headed for the door, already pulling out her phone. Jesse and I watched her go. Boss, Jesse said admiringly, you just unleashed the most powerful gossip network in New England. By tonight, everyone from here to Hartford is going to know your wife's business. Good, I said. Tara always said she wanted to be famous. Let's see how she likes it. My phone rang. Cole's number again. This time I answered. What? Evan, we need to meet. Face to face. Man to man. I'm at Rossetti's. Table 12. Come on down. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and looked at Jesse. You want to stick around for this? Jesse checked his watch. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Cole Travers walked into Rossetti's like he owned the place, which wasn't surprising since he'd probably sold half the commercial real estate in town at some point. He was the kind of guy who looked good in expensive suits and had never worked a day of manual labor in his life. Smooth hands, perfect teeth, the kind of confidence that came from always being the smartest guy in the room. Except today, he looked like hell. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept much. He spotted me and Jesse and walked over, sliding into the booth across from us with the kind of forced casualness that screamed desperation. Evan, he said, extending his hand like we were about to negotiate a business deal. Thanks for agreeing to meet. I looked at his hand, then back at his face. Cole, I didn't agree to anything. You said you were coming, so I didn't leave. There's a difference. He withdrew his hand and tried a different approach. Look, I know this looks bad. It looks bad? I leaned back in my seat. Cole, it doesn't look bad. Bad would be if I caught you flirting with my wife at a party. This is what we call catastrophic. This is what we call, you screwed my wife and lied to your own. Jesse snorted into his coffee. Cole's face flushed red. It's not that simple, Cole said. Tara and I, we have a connection. Something real. It's not just physical. Oh, well, that makes it better, I said. For a minute there, I thought you were just using my wife for sex. But since you have a connection, I guess that makes adultery totally acceptable. Evan, please. I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Cole. I'm disappointed. See, I always thought you were just a sleazy realtor who overcharged city people for lake houses. I had no idea you were also the kind of guy who destroys families for fun. Cole glanced around the restaurant. We were starting to attract attention from other diners, which was exactly what I wanted. In a town like Millbrook, having this conversation in public was the equivalent of taking out a full-page ad in the local newspaper. Can we discuss this privately? Cole asked. No, I said simply. See, Cole, privacy is what got us into this mess. You and Tara decided to handle your connection privately. I'm more of a public disclosure kind of guy. Jesse was openly grinning now. At the next table over, I could see Martha Kowalski, Mrs. Greeley's best friend and biggest rival in the gossip department, leaning in to catch every word. Cole tried one more time. "What do you want, Evan? Money? I can write you a check right now." That was when I lost what was left of my patience. "You think this is about money?" I stood up, and my voice carried across the restaurant. "You think you can write me a check for screwing my wife? What's the going rate, Cole? What do you pay for destroying a marriage?" The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Even the kitchen staff had stopped clattering dishes. "You want to know what I want?" I continued. "I want you to go home to your wife Beth and explain to her where you were last night. I want you to look your 2 little girls in the eye and tell them why Daddy was at a hotel with another woman. I want you to stand up in front of this whole town and own what you've done." Cole's face had gone white. "Evan, please, think about what you're doing." "I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how you and my wife have been laughing at me behind my back. I'm thinking about how you probably discussed what an idiot I was while you were in bed together. I'm thinking about how you thought you were so clever, so smooth, that you'd never get caught." I pulled out my phone and showed him the GPS tracker app. "But mostly, Cole, I'm thinking about how I've been tracking your car for the past 4 hours, and how I know you've been to Tara's studio, your office, and the Riverside Inn again, having trouble deciding where to hide." Cole's mouth fell open. Jessie started laughing out loud. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to leave my wife alone. You're going to stop calling me, stop texting me, and stop pretending that any of this is my fault. And Cole, if I see your car in my driveway, or at Tara's studio, or anywhere near my house, I'm going to assume you're trespassing and call the police." I sat back down and picked up my coffee cup. "Now get out of my sight before I decide to get creative with my response." Cole stood up slowly, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. "This isn't over, Evan." "Yeah, it is," I said without looking at him. "It's been over since the moment you decided to sleep with my wife." He walked out of the restaurant, and the entire place erupted in whispered conversations. Jesse raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. "Boss," he said, "I think you just won the first round." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done in 5 years of marriage. I went through Tara's things. Not just her dresser drawers or her side of the closet, but everything. Her laptop, her tablet, her backup phone that she thought I didn't know about, even the shoebox of old letters and photos she kept on the top shelf of our bedroom closet. What I found was worse than I'd expected. The affair with Cole had been going on for 3 months, but he wasn't the first. There had been at least 2 other men in the past year. A personal trainer from her gym, and a photographer who'd done her professional headshots for her fitness Instagram account. The text messages and emails painted a picture of my wife that I barely recognized, manipulative, calculating, and completely without remorse. But the worst part was what I found in her laptop's browser history. Divorce attorneys, asset protection strategies, articles about hiding money during divorce proceedings. She'd been planning to leave me for months, and she'd been planning to take me for everything I was worth. I was sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by printed emails and bank statements, when Tara finally came home. She walked in like nothing had happened, carrying her yoga mat and wearing the kind of workout clothes that cost more than most people's car payments. She saw me at the table and stopped short. "Evan," she said carefully, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I gestured at the papers spread across the table. "Because I feel like I've been having a very educational conversation with your laptop for the past 2 hours. Her face went pale. "You went through my private things?" "Your private things?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. "Tara, we're married. Or at least we were until you decided to audition replacements behind my back." She set down her yoga mat and tried to look contrite. "Evan, I know this is hard to understand, but Cole and I, we didn't mean for this to happen." "Which time?" I asked. "With Cole, or with Derek the personal trainer, or with Marcus the photographer." Her mouth fell open. Apparently she'd thought she was better at covering her tracks than she actually was. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About the others? I just found out today. About Cole. Since last night, when you told me you were at your mother's house while you were actually screwing around at the Riverside Inn." Tara sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 5 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, almost fragile. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "But you did," I replied. "You hurt me. You hurt Beth Travers. You hurt Cole's kids, and you hurt yourself. And the worst part, Tara, is that you don't even seem to understand why." She reached across the table like she was going to take my hand. I pulled back. "I want a divorce," she said suddenly. "I want us both to be happy, and I don't think we can do that together anymore." I nodded at the papers on the table. I know. I read your emails to that lawyer in Hartford. Very thorough research on Connecticut's alimony laws. Her face flushed. I was just trying to understand my options. Your options for taking half of everything I've worked for while you were busy sleeping with half the town? That's not fair. I stood up and started gathering the papers. Fair? Tara, you want to talk about fair? Fair would have been talking to me about your problems with our marriage. Fair would have been going to counseling. Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you started auditioning my replacements. Where are you going? She asked as I headed toward the door. Out, I said. I need some air, and you need to pack. Pack? I turned back to look at her. This is my house, Tara. I bought it before we got married, it's in my name, and you've made it very clear that you don't want to be married to me anymore. So pack your things and go stay with one of your boyfriends. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. I walked out of my own house and got in my truck, but I didn't drive away. Instead, I sat in my driveway and called my lawyer. Jim, it's Evan McKay. I need to accelerate our timeline. By Thursday morning, the entire town of Millbrook knew about Tara's affair. Mrs. Greeley had done her work with the efficiency of a military operation, and the story had spread through every coffee shop, beauty salon, and church committee in a 20-mile radius. I found this out when I stopped at Murphy's Hardware to pick up some supplies for a job site, and found myself on the receiving end of more sympathy than I'd gotten at my father's funeral. Evan, said Tom Murphy, the store's owner, I just want you to know that everyone in town is behind you on this thing. Thanks, Tom, I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure what this thing was supposed to be. My wife Janet saw Cole at the grocery store yesterday, Tom continued, ringing up my purchase. Said he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. His wife's thrown him out, you know. He's staying at that extended stay motel out on Route 9. I hadn't known that, but I tried to look unsurprised. How's Beth handling it? Better than expected. Janet says she's filing for divorce and going after everything. Apparently this wasn't Cole's first time wandering. I paid for my supplies and was heading back to my truck when I ran into Maddie Chen, who co-owned the Pilates studio with Tara. Maddie was a quiet woman in her early 40s, divorced, with 2 teenage kids, and the kind of practical wisdom that came from surviving her own marital disaster. Evan, she said, approaching me cautiously, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'm sorry about what happened with Tara. Thanks, Maddie. I appreciate that. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's something you should know about the studio. I waited. Tara's been telling people that you're trying to force her out of the business. She's been saying that you're threatening to call in the loan you made us last year unless she gives up her share. This was news to me. Maddie, I haven't talked to Tara about the studio at all. I know, she said quickly. That's why I wanted to tell you. She's been using your name to try to get me to buy her out at below market value. She claims you're pressuring her to liquidate her assets for the divorce. I felt a familiar surge of anger. Even in the middle of destroying our marriage, Tara was still scheming, still manipulating, still trying to come out ahead at everyone else's expense. Maddie, I said carefully, what would you say if I told you that loan doesn't need to be repaid until next year, and I have no intention of calling it in early? Her relief was visible. I'd say thank you, and I'd also say that I've been thinking about dissolving my partnership with Tara anyway. Because of the affair? Because of a lot of things. The affair is just the latest example of her poor judgment. We talked for a few more minutes, and by the time I left, I had a much clearer picture of what Tara had been up to. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was systematically burning bridges all over town, using our marriage problems as an excuse to manipulate everyone around her. That afternoon, I got a call from Jesse. Boss, you need to get down to the supply yard. We've got a situation. I drove over to find Tara's white Honda parked in our customer lot, and Tara herself in our office, screaming at Jesse while our receptionist Linda cowered behind her desk. My husband's business, and I have every right to be here, Tara was saying as I walked in. Actually, I said calmly, you don't. She spun around to face me. Evan, thank God. Tell Jesse that I'm allowed to access our financial records. Our financial records? The business records. I need to understand our assets for the divorce settlement. I looked at Jesse, who shrugged apologetically. Then I looked back at my wife. Tara, this isn't our business. This is my business. You've never worked here, you've never invested in it, and your name isn't on any of the paperwork. You have no legal right to access anything. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife who's been cheating on me for months, and right now you're trespassing. Her face went red. You can't talk to me like that. I can talk to you however I want. This is my property, and you're not welcome here. Fine, she snapped. But this isn't over, Evan. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything, including this business. Your lawyer is wrong, I said, but I'm sure you'll figure that out eventually. She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Jessie and Linda stared after her. Boss, Jessie said finally, your wife has lost her damn mind. Ex-wife, I corrected. And yeah, I'm starting to think you're right. The divorce papers were filed on Friday morning, and by Friday afternoon, Tara had enlisted reinforcements. She showed up at my house with her sister Kelly and her best friend Lila, both of whom had apparently been convinced that I was the villain in the story. I was in my garage, working on restoring a 1967 Camaro that I'd bought as a project car, when the three of them marched in like they were staging an intervention. Evan, Kelly announced, we need to talk. I looked up from the engine I was rebuilding. Kelly was 2 years younger than Tara, but somehow managed to look older, probably from the stress of being married to a gambling addict and raising 3 kids on a teacher's salary. Lila was Tara's workout buddy, a real estate agent who specialized in selling overpriced condos to retirees. Ladies, I said, wiping my hands on a shop rag, to what do I owe the pleasure? You know why we're here, Lila said. This whole thing with Tara has gotten out of hand. Which whole thing would that be? The part where she cheated on me or the part where she lied about it? Kelly stepped forward. Evan, I know my sister made some mistakes, but you're being vindictive. Freezing her out of the bank accounts, embarrassing her in public, trying to destroy her business. That's not the man I thought you were. I set down my tools and gave them my full attention. Kelly, what exactly has Tara told you about our situation? She told us that you two have been having problems for months, Lila said. That you've been distant and angry, that you've been drinking too much, that you threatened to ruin her if she tried to leave you. I nodded slowly. And did she mention that she's been having affairs with multiple men for the past year? The two women exchanged glances. Clearly Tara's version of events had been heavily edited. She told us about Cole, Kelly said defensively. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness when she was feeling neglected and lonely. A moment of weakness that lasted 3 months, I said. And what about Derek the personal trainer? Was that another moment of weakness? How about Marcus the photographer? Lila's confidence wavered. What are you talking about? I walked over to my workbench and picked up a folder I'd prepared for exactly this conversation. Inside were printed copies of text messages, emails, and hotel receipts that painted a very clear picture of my wife's extracurricular activities. Here, I said, handing the folder to Kelly. This is what your sister has been doing while I was supposedly being distant and angry. Kelly opened the folder and started reading. Her face went white, then red, then white again. She handed it to Lila without saying a word. Oh my God, Lila whispered. Tara, you said... I said it was complicated, Tara interrupted from the garage doorway. She'd been waiting outside while her friends did the heavy lifting, but apparently she'd decided to join the conversation. Complicated? Kelly stared at her sister. Tara, according to these messages, you've been planning to divorce Evan for 6 months. You've been consulting lawyers, hiding money, and sleeping with half the town. It's not that simple, Tara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, it is that simple, I said. Your sister is a cheater and a liar, and she got caught. Everything that's happened since then is just consequences. Tara's composure finally cracked. You self-righteous bastard. You think you're so perfect, sitting in your garage, playing with your cars while your wife was dying of boredom. So you decided to cure your boredom by screwing around with married men? I decided to find someone who actually wanted to spend time with me. By lying and cheating and destroying other people's marriages? By taking control of my own life. We were shouting now, and I could see neighbors starting to gather on the sidewalk. In a town like Millbrook, a good domestic dispute was better than cable television. You want to take control of your life? I said, my voice dropping to a deadly calm. Fine. Take control. But do it without my money, without my house, and without my name. I walked over to my workbench and picked up another folder, this one containing the final divorce papers that Jim Patterson had delivered that morning. Congratulations, Tara. You're officially single. The papers were filed this morning, and since you committed adultery, Connecticut law is very clear about asset division. You get nothing except what you brought into the marriage. Her face went pale. You can't do that. I already did it. Your clothes are packed and in boxes by the front door. Your car is in your name, so you can keep that. Everything else stays here. Kelly and Lila were staring at both of us like we were speaking a foreign language. Where am I supposed to go? Tara asked, and for the first time since this whole mess started, she sounded genuinely frightened. I don't care, I said honestly. Go stay with Cole at his extended stay motel. Go back to Derek or Marcus. Go stay with your mother. But you're not staying here. Evan, Kelly said quietly, maybe you two should take some time to cool off before you make any permanent decisions. Kelly, I appreciate that you're trying to help, but this decision was made the moment your sister decided to cheat on me. Everything since then has just been paperwork. I looked at Tara, standing in my garage in her designer workout clothes, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented everything she'd found boring about our marriage. You wanted excitement, Tara. You wanted passion and romance and adventure. Well, congratulations. You're about to have the most exciting, passionate, adventurous experience of your life, being a single woman with no money, no house, and a reputation that's been destroyed in a town where everyone knows your business. She started to cry then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and frustration and the dawning realization that her carefully laid plans had completely backfired. This isn't over, she said through her tears. Yeah, it is, I replied. It's been over for a long time. We just finally made it official. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same garage, working on the same Camaro, when Jesse stopped by with a 6-pack of beer and an update on the local gossip network. You're not going to believe this, he said, handing me a bottle. Cole Travers just filed for bankruptcy. I looked up from the carburetor I was rebuilding. Seriously? Seriously. Apparently Beth took him for everything in the divorce, and he's been living off credit cards since then. Lost his real estate license too, something about ethics violations. I took a sip of beer and considered this information. And Tara? Last I heard, she was working at a gym in Hartford. Maddie bought out her share of the studio for about 10 cents on the dollar. Good for Maddie. Oh, and get this, remember Marcus the photographer? The one who did Tara's professional headshots? That's the one. Turns out he was running the same scam on half a dozen women around town, promising to make them Instagram famous in exchange for private modeling sessions. His wife found out and divorced him too. I shook my head. What is it with people in this town? I don't know, boss, but I'm starting to think you dodged a bullet. We drank our beer in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood, kids playing in yards, lawnmowers running, the normal sounds of people living their normal lives. You ever miss it? Jesse asked eventually. Being married? I thought about it honestly. I miss the idea of being married. I miss thinking I had a partner, someone who had my back. But I don't miss the lying, the drama, the constant feeling that I was never quite good enough. You thinking about dating again? Maybe eventually. But right now, I'm enjoying the peace and quiet. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a split second, I felt the old anxiety, the fear that it might be Tara with some new crisis or demand. But it was just a message from my insurance company about renewing my policy. You know what the best part is? I said to Jesse. What's that? When my phone rings now, it's never bad news. When someone knocks on my door, it's usually a neighbor or a friend. When I come home at night, I know exactly what I'm going to find. My house, my things, my life, exactly the way I left them. Jesse raised his beer bottle in a mock toast. To the simple pleasures. To the simple pleasures, I agreed. We finished our beers as the sun set behind the trees, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt genuinely content. Not happy exactly. That would come later, but content. At peace with my choices, comfortable in my own skin, ready for whatever came next. The Camaro was almost finished. Another few weeks of work, and it would be ready for its first drive in 30 years. I was looking forward to that, taking it out on the back roads, seeing what it could do, enjoying the fruits of my labor. Just like my life, the car was a restoration project, something that had been damaged, neglected, left to rust in someone's garage. But with enough time, patience, and careful work, it could be beautiful again. Maybe even better than it had been before. 3 months later, I was driving that restored Camaro to my wedding. Not my wedding. I wasn't quite ready for that level of commitment yet. But my friend Mike's wedding, where I was serving as best man and driving the happy couple away from the reception in classic style. The bride was Sarah Chen, Maddie's younger sister, a nurse at the local hospital who'd moved back to Millbrook after her residency in Boston. The groom was Mike Patterson, my lawyer Jim's younger brother, a teacher at the elementary school who coached Little League in his spare time. They were good people, the kind of couple that gave you faith in the institution of marriage. They'd been together for 3 years, lived together for 1, and had approached their relationship with the kind of honesty and communication that I'd never had with Tara. As I watched them exchange vows in the little church on Main Street, surrounded by family and friends who genuinely loved and supported them, I found myself thinking about second chances, about the possibility that maybe, someday, I might want to try again, but not yet. For now, I was content to be the guy with the cool car who'd survived his own personal disaster and come out stronger on the other side. After the reception, after I delivered the happy couple to their honeymoon suite, I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook. The town looked different to me now, smaller maybe, but also more honest. I knew its secrets, understood its rhythms, appreciated its simple pleasures in a way I never had before. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, looking at my house. It was just a house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage, a small yard. Nothing fancy, nothing that would impress anyone from the city. But it was mine. Completely. Absolutely. Unquestionably mine. No lies, no deception, no hidden agendas. Just a man, his house, his car, and his hard-won peace of mind. I got out of the Camaro and walked to my front door, keys jingling in my hand. Tomorrow was Monday, which meant back to work at the supply yard, back to the routine of running a small business in a small town. Jesse would be there with coffee and the latest gossip. Linda would have organized my schedule with military precision, and we'd serve the contractors and DIY enthusiasts who kept us in business. It was a good life, not the life I'd planned when I got married 5 years ago, but a good life nonetheless. An honest life, built on solid foundations, designed to last. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, turning on the lights as I went. The house was quiet, clean, exactly as I'd left it. No surprises, no drama, no unwelcome discoveries. Just home